You're talking about they having to pay a tax for protection. Well, then let me go back to your founder, the founder of Islam. I didn't see any protection there. I saw, actually, on the contrary, I saw anti-Semitism there. And you claim that Islam and the Muslims are not anti-Semitic.
You would have to explain this.
I would take the example of the tribe, the Jewish tribe in Medina. What do you say there? Before we start, I'd like to ask you a very important question. Do you support, well, yes, do you support the Islamic system as we have discussed it, the Ottoman system, the Umayyad system, the Islamic system in general?
Obviously, as a Muslim, yes.
So you support the idea that the Jews, the Christians, or any other religious minority in an Islamic state or Islamic system is second-class citizen,
why is that the case?
Is discriminated against?
You would have to explain what you mean with that.
The Ottoman Millet system, wasn't that the case there, that the Jews and the Christians were considered in a different millet than the Muslims?
Different millet, that does not mean different millet, means a different different class or different citizens, but not necessarily first and second and third class in that way. It would mean something like, example, let's go back and understand the millet system. First of all, the millets meant people in an Islamic country are defined by their belief, okay, by their creed. So Christians, Orthodox Christians, for example, would belong to the Orthodox millet. Muslims would belong to the Muslim millet. The Jewish people would belong to the Jewish millet. Like this, people would live and have their own judicial aspect. For example, if a Jew wanted to be trialed by a Jewish court, you know, they could decide to go to the Jewish court, or they could decide to go to the Sharia court. So it was entirely up to them. Many of them even decided to go to the Sharia court because it was fairer than their own courts. Listen to that. So Christians did that, Jews did it in the past as well. So that means, and that should indicate, that despite the fact that they were different, they belonged to different faiths, they still decided to go to Sharia court because they saw that the Islamic Sharia would be even more fairer towards them and their kind, actually, than their own people would be. So discrimination in that way, absolutely not. Discrimination to say that the Christians were not joining the Muslim army. What is better than that? I mean, I would have liked not to go to the army. I was forced to go to the Greek army. This video is sponsored by the Muqaddima program.
For nearly 7 centuries, Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddima has been read and studied by scholars and students of history, sociology, politics and economics as the single most authoritative and astounding work of classical scholarship in the field of history. Embark on an enlightening educational venture led by Muslim scholars and teachers delving into Islamic history, sociology, economics and beyond. Engage with cutting-edge learning cues and multimedia components, allowing for a deeper understanding of the topics. Distinguish between the lies and the truths of the narratives told, between reliable and unreliable sources. Equip yourself with the skills to conduct deep research and build confidence to combat Islamophobia. Come and strengthen your Muslim identity today. Grab the course in the video description.
You know, in order to be considered a full Greek citizen. In Greece, for example, nowadays you don't even get a job if you don't go to the army. So
yeah, but
you tell me about discrimination.
They have to pay a tax.
Of course, everybody pays. Don't you pay taxes when you go?
Well, the Muslims don't have to pay a jizya, they call it. They don't have to pay.
The Muslims pay zakat. The Muslims pay zakat. That's the Muslim tax. Okay, and the non-Muslims pay the jizya, for example. That's absolutely right. So everybody would pay taxes, yes, but according to who they are, what their background is. Now, they don't have to join the army. They are protected by the Muslims. The Muslims who protect them have to live on something, right? Wouldn't this be the tax that would go to them?
You're talking about they having to pay a tax for protection. Well, then let me go back to your founder, the founder of Islam. I didn't see any protection there. I saw, actually, on the contrary, I saw anti-Semitism there. And you claim that Islam and the Muslims are not anti-Semitic.
You would have to explain this.
I would take the example of the tribe, the Jewish tribe in Medina. What do you say there?
So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu you're referring, of course, to the Jewish tribe in Medina. Sorry.
Tough question, huh? Yeah.
Well, Absolutely not. If you try to listen, then you would understand, actually, hopefully at the end, where we're leading, where this conversation is leading you to. So first of all, there were many different tribes, Jewish tribes, living in Medina at the time. Absolutely right. Now there's none, right? So you could now come and say, look at this, Medina was a city which had Jewish roots, but now none. Why did you say that? You could have, I'm giving you that now. Now what happened that time with specific tribes, for example, this specific tribe that actually took the side of the enemy and broke the treaty that there was. There was a treaty in Medina. And by the way, do you know that the Medina constitution is considered nowadays as one of the original constitutions of any constitution in the world? In America, for example, they take this as an example for the constitution, as an example for constitutions in the world. So the Medina constitution plays and has been playing an important role for people in the world and for the development of constitutions of nations in the world. So this constitution, okay, actually gave the Jews and the Christians living there more rights than they would have ever had before. So these Jews, these Jewish tribes specifically, that went against this constitution and the treaty, okay, committed treason. To commit treason in a country like this, for example, in the UK or in Germany or wherever you are, is a problem, is an issue, isn't it? So you would be tried. In a country like this, you would be tried. Okay. So what about that time, especially seeing the circumstances of Medina being the only Muslim state, being surrounded by enemies, and so on and so on. So that was the issue. He did not, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not kick the Jews out of Medina because of them being Jews. But so there's no anti-Semitism, because he did that because they became traitors. It was a specific tribe that became traitors, and they were kicked out of Medina, not because of them being Jewish. All right? So I think that is very clear.
That may be the case there. Then I bring another case with regards to Al-Andalus. Golden age, brilliant period of the Muslims. There have been situations there with regards to the Jews being kicked out, or even worse, massacred.
Example?
In Al-Andalus, the southern part of Al-Andalus.
What happened in Al-Andalus? I mean, you would have to give me concrete examples. As far as I know, the golden period of the Jews was actually in Al-Andalus. Okay, we're talking about Spain and Portugal, right? That's Al-Andalus.
Yeah.
The part from 711 to 1492. During that time, let me finish. During that time, the Jews actually experienced a golden period. And later, under the Ottomans as well. And the Jews admitted until nowadays. There you go.
For the Ottomans. But the Millet of the Jews, weren't they supposed to wear something specific that would identify them as Jews? Again, putting a target on their back if there were ever a situation like...
Again, Al-Andalus was a period of time of about 700 to 800 years. And there were several rulers, a big number of different kind of rulers. And Al-Andalus got actually destroyed within the 11th, 12th centuries, actually. That's where it got destroyed. So the Taifa systems that developed later had different rulers, meaning different Muslim princes who were fighting against each other. Okay, now to take them as an example of Muslim rulers, that's quite unfair, because you would have to look into the period of time when Al-Andalus was Al-Andalus, between 750 and, let's say, 750 and the 11th century. So when we look at these 3-4 centuries at the beginning, from Abdurrahman I to Abdurrahman III, you see actually clearly that these the emirs and later the caliphs, because it became a caliphate, they had a clear Islamic system under which Jews and Christians were Ahl al-Kitab. Whereas later, with the loss of power of the Muslims, you could see a chaotic situation, chaos for the Muslims as well as for the Jews and the Christians. Of course, if there was chaos for the Muslims and for the Muslim system, there was of course also chaos for the Jews and for the Christians. So things happened that we cannot be proud of. And indeed things happened that were not supposed to happen, they were not supported by the Sharia. Okay, so yes, things happen in Al-Andalus, but in the later period of Al-Andalus, and in certain periods of time where certain rulers were ruling. Okay, again, it's the same like the Ottomans, for example. We spoke in another episode about that. The Ottomans were 36 rulers. Okay, now out of these 36 rulers, it's logical that some of them were not the best of them, but there were some very good ones and some very bad ones, which is a normal thing in every empire in the world and in history. You would agree, wouldn't you?
It still brings me on to another point with regards to the Christian Balkans. There are stories...
Because everything was answered before, now you would have to find another point, right? Okay, no, I'm happy about that. That's good.
There are stories. There are stories. Not that everything was answered before, but this is very important to mention. There are stories of, as I've mentioned episodes before, but you haven't addressed them. That's why I'm bringing them up again. Of the poor Greek peoples having to learn their language in the mountains with the priests. It's
These are all legend and myths and narratives, okay, that were developed during the time.
The injustice
after the
on
time,
the Christian.
after the time of the Ottomans.
Balkans.
Okay, until nowadays we're learning this nonsense. I myself learned this nonsense at school. Okay, where we have Greek history books that actually during primary school time of children, and this is something that it's not me who is saying that, but if you watch a very interesting and very important documentary which is called 1821 with regards to the revolution of the Greeks against the Ottomans, you see that there are two university professors, Greek university professors, non-Muslims, who actually tell you what I'm going to tell you now, that during that time of the Ottomans, okay, there was more freedom, okay, with regards to the Christian subjects than it was in many Christian countries during the time of the Ottomans in Europe. Okay, number one. Second, many myths developed after the time of the Ottomans in order to create a Greek nation, which was a new thing. Okay, in order to create a Greek nation, they had to create myths and legends and lies against the previous occupiers, who were the Ottomans. Okay, so all these lies are taught nowadays at primary school, in Greek primary schools, and not only, but also throughout the Balkans, in order to actually make their children, and this is a direct quote from him, love their country. So in order for Greek children to love their Greek country, Greece, okay, they have to believe in these myths. They have been taught. They have to be taught these myths. And everybody in the school system, education system, knows that they're all myths, okay, and exaggerations. I hope I've answered your question.